Hello, my name is Susan Court, and I am the co-president of the Kentucky Genealogical Society, which was founded in 1973 by an enthusiastic group of genealogists and family researchers. We currently have over 1,000 members throughout Kentucky, the United States, and other countries. We all have one thing in common, though. We love our Kentucky roots and we want to learn more about them. So in this presentation, I want to share a few tips to that end. Kentucky became the 15th state in the Union in 1792. Eventually, our counties numbered 120, the third most counties in the nation. Only Georgia and Texas have more than Kentucky. And each one of these counties has its own personality and rich heritage. Before Kentucky entered the Union along with West Virginia, it was part of Virginia. That's important to understand because you may need to know where to go to find your Kentucky roots. And so let me illustrate with an example of changes in boundary lines. If a family lived in Mason County, Kentucky from 1750 to 1800 and remained on the same land during that period, the genealogist would begin his research in the Mason County courthouse before going back in time. From there, he would go to Bourbon County, from which Mason was formed in 1789, and from there to its parent county, Fayette, also in Kentucky. Fayette was one of the three counties formed from the short-lived Kentucky County that was 1777 to 1780, which was the child of another short-lived county, Fincastle, from 1772 to 1777. Fincastle's parent was Batata County in Virginia, founded in 1770 from Augusta County, Virginia. Thus, the historian of our hypothetical Mason County family must examine the records of three counties and two states, Mason, Bourbon, and Fayette in Kentucky, and Batata and Augusta in Virginia. In this presentation, I want to give you some ideas on where to find Kentucky's records, mainly its state and local public records, and a few special collections of publicly available records. As genealogists, our primary focus is primary records, those created by governments memorializing important life events, or as we know them, vital records. Years in which statewide vital record keeping officially began varies from state to state. Some counties or towns kept stats before or earlier, and some were slow to comply with state laws. Statewide in Kentucky, birth records were officially kept starting in 1911, and marriage records in 1958, and death records also in 1911. Death records are publicly available after 50 years, and birth records are publicly accessible after 100 years. Now, the Kentucky department responsible for collecting and maintaining vital records is the Office of Vital Statistics in Frankfort, the state's capital. Another state agency with Kentucky family records is the State Archives. The Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives, also known as the KDLA, in Frankfort. The KDLA has tens of thousands of microfilm reels and untold amount of state, judicial, and local records on paper, dating as far back as pre-statehood, including original documents from court cases, tax books, marriages, divorces, wills, various land records such as deeds, grants, patents, surveys, vital records registering births and deaths, and many other materials from Kentucky state agencies. The KDLA also provides inventories and guides online to illustrate what records are available there, but records must be accessed on site in person. in their research room, or they can be requested remotely for a fee. It's $20 for Kentuckians and $25 for non-Kentucky residents. Digital records from the KDLA are available online through the Kentucky State Digital Archives. These records are primarily foreign digital records from more recent administrations and government agencies. The KSDA does not include the local records, which most genealogists are really interested in. The main game in town for Kentucky's primary records, birth, death, marriage, divorce, deeds, tax, voter, land records, probate, is the county courthouse. The county official with the most county records is the county clerk. A county clerk is the exclusive custodian of his or her records, regardless of where those records may be housed. The circuit court clerks also have records of interest to genealogists, like naturalization papers and divorce records. Access to any judicial record within the control of the circuit court clerks is also governed by the Kentucky Supreme Court. At bottom, the availability of Kentucky's public primary records depends on the county. That availability, including access to digitized records, is a patchwork quilt in the Commonwealth. To learn more requires just going county by county. Let me digress for a moment. 3 years ago, almost to the day, the Kentucky Genealogical Society began to collaborate with FamilySearch to preserve Kentucky primary records by digitization. Now, this effort has taken two paths. At first, and this is still going on, the society helped FamilySearch get in touch with county clerks to arrange for the digitization of records on site in the clerks' courthouses. This involves FamilySearch bringing cameras and scanners to the county seats. In exchange for allowing FamilySearch to digitize their records, the county clerks receive a copy of the digitization, and then FamilySearch posts them online, free of charge, of course. To date, 5 county clerks have signed agreements with FamilySearch, and the Rockcastle records have already been digitized. The second path began last summer when FamilySearch and the KDLA entered into an agreement, signed an agreement to allow FamilySearch to come to its facilities in Frankfort to digitize the county clerk's microfilmed records housed there. As I mentioned, these records are available to the public in person, on site in Frankfort, or remotely for a fee. Now, the agreement between FamilySearch and the KDLA is really the functional equivalent of a vendor's agreement. Notwithstanding that the records are available in Frankfort, their digitization requires the permission of each county clerk, who is the official record custodian, as I mentioned earlier. This, in turn, requires an agreement between each clerk interested in the digitization of his or her records and receiving a free copy to sign an agreement with FamilySearch. And this agreement is called a records release form. So far, 9 clerks in the Commonwealth have signed their records release forms. And the scanning of those records, is scheduled to begin in the near future. In fact, by the time that you see this video, it may have already begun. I want to mention, on behalf of the Kentucky Genealogical Society and really all Kentucky genealogists, I cannot thank FamilySearch enough, or we cannot thank FamilySearch enough for helping us preserve our precious family records. Speaking of FamilySearch, here is an overview of the FamilySearch centers, or I should say the FamilySearch resources in Kentucky. The centers, the FamilySearch centers, and the FamilySearch affiliated libraries. Now, the list of the centers is a couple years old. I could not find a more recent compilation. in preparation for this webinar. I mention this because, as you may know, FamilySearch is considering closing some of its centers or repurposing them. So just keep that in mind if you want to reach out to one of the centers. The affiliate this decision is not going to affect the affiliated libraries, though. And speaking of libraries, Kentucky does not have one. In other words, it doesn't have a state library the way other states do. For example, the Library of Virginia in Richmond, Virginia, and talk about a library. I mean, it's like, for a genealogist, it's like dying going to heaven. It is a wonderful, wonderful repository in which to conduct research. The KDLA is referred to as the Kentucky State Library, but it really doesn't function as a library normally would. Rather, it is dedicated to meeting the informational and training needs of Kentucky state government employees. Fortunately, Kentucky does have some splendid specialized libraries with collections which cover many topics and with appeal to Kentuckians across the state and around the country. Here are just a few. The Martin F. Schmidt Research Library at the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History. There are university and college libraries such as the University of Kentucky and the Paul Blazer Library at the Kentucky State University in Frankfort. Whoops, let me go back. The Filson Historical Society, which is a wonderful place in which to do research. And then there's the Sons of the American Revolution Genealogical Research Library, also in Louisville. And just by the way, the SAR's national headquarters is in Louisville. Before leaving the state level, I just want to mention the man considered to be the father of Kentucky genealogy, Dr. Thomas Clark. Dr. Clark was the Kentucky Historian Laureate from 1990 until his death in 2005. He saved from destruction a large portion of Kentucky's printed history, which later became the core body of the documents at the KDLA. Clark's advocacy spanned over 6 decades, beginning in 1931 when he became a faculty member at the University of Kentucky and was later appointed as the statewide director of the WPA Historical Records Survey. The Kentucky Historical Society Center for Kentucky History is named in his honor, and as I just mentioned, the library of the Kentucky Historical Society is in that center. Dr. Clark has said many interesting things, but this is one that I especially like. A society without records is a society without navigational equipment. Kentucky is also blessed with wonderful public libraries in every county. Many of them have history departments or even genealogy departments with staffs who know how to direct patrons on how to use the computers to access the genealogy databases or how to use the microfilm readers. More to the point, they can help researchers in locating relevant collections to find their ancestors. Many of our libraries also serve as meeting places for the local genealogists and historians, many of whom do not have brick and mortar facilities. They lost them. A lot of them lost them during the pandemic. Kentucky is also fortunate that most of its counties have historical and genealogical societies or a combination of the two. These societies are standalone. There is no like council or association of local societies in Kentucky as some other states have. Now, some of the museums and cultural centers in the Commonwealth also perform functions similar to what a local society would perform, and some of these are affiliated with local governments. The societies, though, for the most part, are nonprofit 501c3 organizations. As a general matter, the societies do not maintain or have records because they don't have physical facilities. Now, what the societies and similar organizations have in common are wonderful staffs, mostly volunteer, who know where the records can be found and are also familiar with the local government officials. They're familiar with the courthouses and can help a researcher navigate through the records at those courthouses. There are there are several special collections of publicly available records, which are very important for researching Kentucky heritage. The first is newspapers, and we all know how great newspapers can be in finding vital information as well as giving us insight into the occupations, the weddings, the other activities of our ancestors and collateral relatives. Insight that we can then weave into our stories about these ancestors and collateral relatives. Kentucky newspapers can be found at all three levels: national, state, and local. Nationally, they can be found at the Library of Congress's Cron-Am site, which has identified over 2,100 Kentucky newspaper titles from 1690 to the present, and they have digitized 80 of them. At the state level, the University of Kentucky's library has the largest and most comprehensive collection of keyword searchable digitized Kentucky newspapers. The Kentucky Historical Society has a relatively small collection in comparison. They have microfilm reels from about 37 counties. Now, if a local society has physical facilities, it may also have digitized records, newspaper records, or paper copies of records, as will the public libraries. So just sort of check out these two. On the left is from the Todd County Historical Society. Todd County is in the western part of the state. And on the right is from the Cynthiana Harrison County Public Library, the Log Cabin newspaper, which has been digitized really with a grant from the Kentucky Genealogical Society. And I love this this collection. It's very user friendly, and I have had a lot of fun in using it to conduct my family's research. And Harrison County is in the northern part of the state. Let me go back one here. Yes. Now listed on this slide are two other collections of note. The L&N Railroad records at the University of Louisville, and a lot of Kentuckians worked for the L&N Railroad. So that's one to check out. And also there's the non-population census, U.S. Census records for Kentucky at Duke University. If you have not used these non-population census schedules, be sure to try them out if you have an ancestor in Kentucky during these periods, because they have an incredible amount of information about people in those records. Now, the last point here is just sort of a tidbit, an FYI. Kentucky has more cemeteries than any other state or commonwealth. And of course, you can search those cemeteries through sites like Find a Grave or Billion Graves. In fact, there's probably on Find a Grave, there are over 4 million Kentucky memorials. Researching Kentucky heritage can be enhanced by joining the Kentucky Genealogical Society. Now, this is just not a shameless pitch for the society. Well, maybe a little bit. Besides many of the benefits we offer for interacting with and learning from fellow genealogists and promoting the preservation of records through digitization, we maintain a learning library of webinars, which we started to offer to our members in 2017. And since then, we have collected more than videos of more than 150 webinars on a wide range of topics, which are still available to our members. That's why we call it the Learning Library. Now, many of these webinars, though, are directly address ways to research Kentucky records. And the very first one I've listed is especially important because the Kentucky U.S. Census from 1790, and there actually was one that was created, even though Kentucky didn't join the Union until 1792, and the U.S. Census for 1800 have been lost. They don't exist. But the tax records from that period are in pretty good shape, and they are a very good substitute for the 1790/92 and 1800 U.S. Census records. As a final matter for researching Kentucky heritage, I want to mention two books which our society has put together in the last couple of years. These are available on Amazon, but they're also available at many public libraries. These guides are just packed with expert tips, historical insights, and practical strategies to help family historians navigate through Kentucky's unique records and rich history. So I thank you very much and happy hunting for your Kentucky roots.